What's good? It's Woog. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I want to talk a little Amir Khan versus Kell Brook. Not one of the most relevant in terms of who the best fighters of today are, types of fights of the year, but it's certainly one of the funnest fights, and it's a fight that is long overdue. Given that it's a long grudge match between the two. Like, they've been saying nasty stuff in the public, in the press, about each other for like the better part of the last decade, at least. And we'll get into the full preview. I'll do another follow-up vid to this, probably in the beginning of fight week or something, where we, look at the background of both fighters, analyze the fight, and make a prediction. I just want to kind of think out loud a little bit, just in terms of what we should expect with this fight. Are we glad that this fight's being made? Well, that one's an easy one. I think everybody, even though it's past its relevancy, part of the expiration date, I think we're all excited and interested to see how this one's actually going to play out. And, when these guys were both at or near their prime, like the whole time, I would have told you if they were to fight, it would be Kell Brook to win the fight. I mean, he was the one whose whole career, more or less, has been at 147. Yes, he has messed around at 154. But, in his championship years when he was like the IBF champ after beating Shawn Porter, he was at 147. Amir Khan had his best days, I believe, at 140. Like, he was killing it when around the time he beat Andres Kotelnik to win the WBA light welterweight 140-pound title, and then he went on the run after beating Kotelnik, stopping Paulie Malignaggi, beating Maidana via decision, although he had to hold on late in that fight, looking absolutely spectacular against Zab Judah. Like, Amir Khan is so damn talented, and when he was fighting at 140, and even after he had those back-to-back losses against Lamont Peterson and Danny Garcia, getting stopped by Garcia. Yes, he also got stopped way back in 2008 versus Breidis Prescott, but he got stopped 4 years later against Danny Garcia in a unification fight at 140. Even after that, when he then went up to like welterweight 147, the way that he fought against like Devin Alexander, former two-division champ. Devin Alexander was a champ at 140 and would also become the champ at 147 before losing that belt to Shawn Porter, the same belt that Kell Brook would later capture versus Shawn Porter. But Amir Khan's performance versus Devin Alexander, like, Amir Khan's one of these rare guys. Like, he's got that lightning hand speed, that special hand speed. But it's in a way where he doesn't just throw one punch like a whip. Like, if you watch prime Shane Mosley throw a right overhand or a left hook, blazing hand speed. But Amir Khan's style of deploying the hand speed was in throwing like 3 to 4 punch or even 5, 6, 7 punch combinations. A little bit more Manny Pacquiao-like, but Manny Pacquiao, well, they both use footwork where they would jump in and out of the pocket. And if you were a counterpuncher like Paulie Malignaggi, waiting for something to counter, that time would never come against Amir Khan because he's shooting those punches 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 so fast that you just got hit 5, 6 times and you had no clean pocket to try to throw a counter from. So the way that people, the theory in beating Amir Khan was you got to punch with Amir Khan. Like, that's your only shot. That's why there was even a point in time where people wanted to see, like, damn, I wonder how Floyd Mayweather or Manny Pacquiao would do against Amir Khan. Just because he was looking that special athletically, and plus he was 5'10", not 5'7", not 5'5", but about 5'10", throwing hands that quickly, both hands, shooting them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then going to the body too. Like, look at how he butchers Zab Judah over the course of a few rounds before stopping him, and look at the body shots that he was hitting Judah with. Like, Judah, like Devin Alexander, like Paulie Malignaggi, just looked defenseless. Like, they looked like they were surrounded by Amir Khan in several instances of their fight. So despite all that special athleticism, by the way, I always wanted to see Timothy Bradley versus Amir Khan at 140. That was one of those fights that we unfortunately never got. I really wonder how that one would have played out. But again, Amir Khan was just a special talent, but he's had the reputation because of a couple of his losses, like getting knocked out by Danny Garcia, getting knocked out by Breidis Prescott several years before that, and obviously getting knocked out cold by Canelo Alvarez in 2016 in a fight that, Amir Khan should have never been fighting, just like Kell Brook should have never been fighting Gennady Golovkin, Triple G, 2 divisions up. That was like a what the hell are you doing type of fight, if you're Kell Brook's manager. It was one of those things where Kell Brook felt that he was so avoided that he had to go up and fight Triple G to find an exciting fight. Well, ill-advised, and Kell Brook's face, his orbital bone, paid for it. And similarly, Amir Khan should have never been fighting Canelo Alvarez at middleweight. It wasn't even at 154. It was at middleweight 160. Yeah, Amir Khan was at his best at 140. He was at his near best, I would say, at 147. Anything above that is just not Amir Khan. But this fight between Khan and Kell Brook is going to be fought at a catchweight of 149. And like I said, any step along the way, I would have favored Kell Brook because he was the proper 147-pound fighter, heavier handed than Amir Khan, comparable speed. I think I would still give a speed edge to Amir Khan, but Kell Brook had fast hands. Look at how he fought Triple G in those early rounds. Look at Kell Brook outspeeding, in my opinion, Errol Spence Jr. in the title fight where Kell Brook lost his IBF title to Errol Spence, a loss and a belt that Errol Spence holds to this day, along with the WBC title. But Kell Brook looked very good early, and even in the middle rounds against Errol Spence. Hand speed, he was able to get off first with the right hand to where, Errol Spence had to kind of like back up in certain instances and figure out a way to then work over Kell Brook, go to the body, get on the stick, get on the jab. Errol Spence's jab is kind of, over the years, turned into what I see as one of the best weapons in all of boxing. No, it's not like a knockout punch, but what I'm saying is Errol Spence has learned the ability to control a fight with the jab. But yeah, Kell Brook was the speed demon in that fight, at least in the early to middle rounds. I feel like Kell Brook was never the same fighter after fighting Triple G, and especially after the follow-up fight against Errol Spence Jr. Those 2 fights, for me, they kind of ruined Kell Brook's career. He went to 154 for a time after that and fought Michael Zarafa. By the way, Michael Zarafa around that time was looking pretty good, and he was throwing a mean right hand. That fight against Zarafa kind of makes me think that I might still favor him over Amir Khan, but that's assuming that we're even dealing with the same Kell Brook, not even pre-Triple G fight, but I'm talking like 2018, like just a couple years ago. Because the way that he fought Terrence Crawford in his very last fight, November 2020, again, he got off to a pretty good start where you could give him maybe like 2 of the first 3 rounds against Terrence Crawford, who isn't the greatest starter. He's an adjuster. He's an adapter. That's Terrence Crawford's fight style. Start off orthodox, then switch to southpaw, which he did in the 3rd round, and then shortly after that, he stopped Kell Brook in the 4th round, and it was with a weird kind of like a jab hook, but it was like really weirdly timed. And that's another thing about Terrence Crawford. He's a master of timing. So given that type of a stoppage for Kell Brook, because if Kell Brook was nothing before that, he was still durable. Like, you would still think that, okay, yes, he's now broken both orbital bones. One orbital bone against Triple G, and then the other, unfortunately, against Errol Spence. Damn, that's terrible if you're a fighter. 2 broken, 2 facial issue types of fights. And then he went on the 3-fight win streak against Rabchenko, Zarafa, and DeLuca. And then he fought Crawford. Started well against Crawford, got stopped in the 4th. But the way that he got stopped just has me saying, like, damn, what the hell was that, Kell? Like, once he got hit with that weird punch that didn't even look like a hard punch, but again, the timing was weird. It was in a weird placement, but it looked like Kell Brook's legs were just out from under him after that point. He went staggering, falling through the ropes, and then barely staying on his feet, and then putting up no resistance and covering up until the ref, stopped the fight, basically. But that really has me scratching my head and a little bit reluctant to take him here, even against Amir Khan, who is well past his prime. Like, Amir Khan hasn't fought in about 3 years now. Think about that. 3 years of inactivity. Like, if you're 1.5 years out of the ring, it's like, ugh. But 3 years, and his last opponent was Billy Dibb. This was July 2019. And then before that was Amir Khan's, almost, I hate to use the word quit and apply it to people who have exhibited the spirit of like Amir Khan and all these great boxers that we've come to love. But it wasn't a good look when he was hit low against Terrence Crawford in the 6th round and just more or less refused to continue. Again, if he was truly, that badly hurt low, and I would never begrudge a fighter for pulling out if they're truly damaged to that area with the punch. But things were definitely looking uglier and uglier for Amir Khan against Terrence Crawford. And a lot of people think that Amir Khan was looking for a way out. I won't go that far. But as I'm watching the fight, it's like, damn, really, man? Really? That's what it felt like as a fan of both fighters. But it's almost like a question of who has more, not even ability, but like heart, desire left in the tank between Amir Khan and Kell Brook. Those are like my early thoughts on this. Again, Amir Khan, immensely talented. He might still have the hand speed advantage. Kell Brook has actually, again, fought more recently than Amir Khan has. And again, any step of the way, I would have taken Kell Brook. But again, Kell Brook's style of losing to Terrence Crawford has me kind of reluctant on that. I will say this. If Kell Brook thinks that he's just going to be outboxing Amir Khan from the outside, I don't think that that's Kell Brook's path to victory. I actually think that he's going to have to just steal on him, make it a fight. Because again, if you're waiting to get the clean counterpunching opportunity against an Amir Khan, it's just not going to come if Amir Khan still has the same hand speed. Now, another thing to consider here is Amir Khan, as much of his hand speed was an issue for opponents, his foot speed was an issue. His ability to move around the ring and then jump in and out, jump in, throw 4 to 7 punches, which sometimes hanging around the pocket too long has been Amir Khan's undoing if you're fighting a Danny Garcia who is willing to punch with you. But Amir Khan, I can't expect his feet, his legs at this age to be what they were in his prime or even in his near prime. So Amir Khan is 35 years old now. So even if he has early round success with another fast starter in Kell Brook, because again, Kell Brook won a couple of the early rounds against Triple G, won a couple of the early rounds against Terrence Crawford, won a few of the early to middle rounds against Errol Spence. That fight was looking pretty even through several rounds. Amir Khan, even if he gets off to a good start against Kell Brook, which again isn't a given, I can't expect him to hold up in the middle rounds in terms of having the footwork and the upper body movement to stay out of the harm's way of Kell Brook's power punches. I think Kell Brook is going to be the harder hitter between the two. And assuming Kell Brook's not going to fold as soon as he gets blasted with the first few shots or weirdly placed shots by Amir Khan, is assuming that he doesn't just say, F it, and I'm out of here, and thank you for the check, and we're done with this. Assuming Kell Brook wants to win this fight and truly has desire to win this fight, I think my initial thoughts are that he catches Amir Khan in the middle and late rounds and basically starts beating Amir Khan up. Like, he's going to have to say F it, be willing to take the shots from Amir Khan, who just blazing hand speed. But if Kell Brook is willing to walk through that and still has the fortitude and the structural integrity of his face to walk through some of that, he can beat Amir Khan in the middle and late rounds, because Amir Khan's not going to have the legs or the durability late in this fight. But he might rack up and win a few of the early rounds. But yeah, if I had to guess who's going to win this, I would still say Kell Brook via middle to late round stoppage. But we're going to take a deeper look into this fight. We're going to do a proper preview, proper breakdown, analysis, and prediction. But yeah, I'm actually very excited about Amir Khan versus Kell Brook, even if it is several years too late. And you know what? Like, they both kind of walked off the cliff at the same time. Like, it was the same year that Amir Khan fought Canelo Alvarez, 2016, that Kell Brook fought Triple G, 2016. They both had the "what the hell are you doing" fight in the same year. And I wonder if they both knew that they still had each other down the line to have a mega event like this one, or at least a very big event. But their top years as top-notch competitors in their respective divisions, that is several years ago at this point. But yeah, man, Amir Khan in his prime, he was one of those fighters who is truly a joy to watch. And at one point, Kell Brook was one of my favorite fighters, pound for pound, especially when he had those 3 title defenses. Like after beating Sean Porter, who was looking like a buzzsaw, by the way that Sean Porter beat Paulie Malignaggi had a lot of people saying, "Damn, what the hell is this all about?" It turns out he didn't really have he didn't showcase and exhibit that same punching power and danger later on in his career. He still won a ton of fights and beat a lot of good fighters, but Sean Porter was looking dangerous against Paulie Malignaggi, the way that he stopped him. And it was after that Kell Brook upset Sean Porter. So Kell Brook then had that 3-fight title defense streak where it was looking like, damn, you know, Kell Brook and Keith Thurman at the time were looking like the best welterweights of the post Floyd Mayweather, and we could even say post Manny Pacquiao, even though Manny Pacquiao continued to fight, but he was fighting like Timothy Bradley's and Jeff Horns and Marquez the 4th time. But in this post Floyd Mayweather era at welterweight, it was looking like Keith Thurman and Kell Brook were the class of the division then, even though again you had Timothy Bradley, Manny Pacquiao, and an emerging at the time Errol Spence Jr. Terrence Crawford was still like at 135, 140 at this time. But yeah, let me know what your early thoughts are on Amir Khan versus Kell Brook. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.